you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in a business. Not because they want to do it, just because they heard it pays. And who the fuck wants to be poor knowing that's how we've been raised? Society is getting heavy, I can feel the weight. The pressure of success is like 100 million pounds of shit.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Gangi. Welcome to another episode of Tier Talk. Okay, so we have a request coming our way. I got it through my email. So we do a lot of videos on inmate manipulation. And hopefully I got a book coming out soon. It's in the hands of the editor. And one of the questions was, I don't want to make it controversial, but again, we'll try to balance it out as the dialogue happens. We're going to try to be very careful of how we word things. But basically, is the strategy of manipulation, the process of the game, different if it's a male inmate trying to manipulate a female staff member or if it's a female inmate trying to manipulate a male staff member? So again, I just want to say something. Nothing's 100%. We're not trying to stereotype, but I don't even want to say law of averages, but what we'll do is we'll kind of run over some case-by-case scenarios. And then you could decide if that applies to the specific gender or if this is just an individual thing, because you really can't say that one catches all, because we know that's not the case. There's always going to be exceptions to that. And I want to make sure that we on this channel lead away from stereotypes or just generalizations that people could find to be unfair. But again, this request is a great request, a conversation that me and Connie's going to be on the show discussing this with us, who really thought about this and really tried to make sure that we get a fair perspective, but also an honest perspective. So without further ado, Connie, what's going on? How are you?
Hello everyone. Connie Alleyne here, founder and president of the Civilian Corrections Academy, also the podcast host of The Fly Behind the Wall, and now I can say I will be a published author as of October 30th. So it's an exciting time, and it's great when we can continue to help pull this dialogue out of each other. We talked about this same topic twice already, and each time we've talked about it, we've come up with something new to explore. So we're here for it tonight.
Yeah, Connie, real quick, the book that's coming out, what's the name of the book?
It's called The Cage Was Her Cocoon. It is a journey from prison administrator to entrepreneur.
Yeah, I hope, guys, if you guys get a chance, the book will come out probably by the end of October. Please support Connie. She supports us every day. She's willing to come on the show and just discuss correctional issues. Pretty much she'll drop anything to, share some insight, which I know for a fact is helping us become better at what we do. So if we could show support, when it comes out, we'll even do a release where we really discuss the book a little bit. I'm also going to buy some copies and I'm going to give them away. I'm sure our subscribers would love to get a copy of Connie's signed books. Yes, Connie, they're going to get delivered to you, the books I buy, and you're going to sign them. And then you're going to deliver the books back to me, and I will go ahead and take care of the magic from there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think my audience would love it. And then my book will write up soon afterwards. And then maybe me, you, Russ, because we're going to have Russ on pretty much every Thursday. I have you on every Tuesday, and then maybe Lewis on every Saturday morning. I think all of us should work together on a book, just general book for the corrections profession, but we'll get there because it's something I feel that's needed and we could have fun with. Now, guys, if you haven't, the show Tear Talks to you, brave men and women that work in corrections. So please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. Bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. We're going to go to our sponsor and we're going to come back. We're going to talk about the process. I mean, does it differ if the staff member is a male or a female? Does it differ if the inmate doing it is a male or a female? Let's see. Stand by.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Guys, inmate manipulation is a course that is highly needed. It's the process that's so slow moving and subtle that you don't realize it's happening. When inmates choose to manipulate, they manipulate our need to react. Situational awareness and insight is going to save your career. It's going to save you from doing foolish things. Listen to your gut. So the more insight we have, the more we can recognize what isn't so overt, and we can correct our behavior before we fall into a trap that we can't get out of. If you allow an inmate to pull you out of your prescribed role, you are opening up a door for a host of problems. Inmate manipulation, the psychology behind inmate manipulation. Available now. Link in description. All right, and we are back. So, Connie, this was a pretty good dialogue that we had. There was a back and forth. I would like to think that this dialogue that we're going to have right now is going to be about 25 minutes. I have a feeling it's going to be one of the longer ones, so forgive us, guys. But we have been as good as we could trying to keep things within 25 minutes. I just want to make sure that we get a good perspective out there, a complete perspective, and we don't offend anybody in the process. So I explained my perspective, how it is more of a general discussion. Again, we're not trying to stereotype. We're not trying to say that this is something that catches everyone, when obviously there are going to be extremes that could be very easily argued. Again, we're just giving up our thoughts. Connie, any perspective before we start?
Just that, I mean, I personally feel that there is there's a shift in the process depending on whether it's a male or female. Having worked with both male and female offenders, I have seen it play out different ways depending on who the target is, as well as who the actual offender is. So I look forward to seeing where this goes.
Yes, me too, because obviously we learn a lot along the way. It's not scripted. So how should we do this? So should we start off with the should we start off with the female offender and possibly the games that they may play on a male staff member? Now, mind you guys, it could also happen to a female staff member, but I do want to keep the focus on what was asked of us. But easily, the games that are being played on the male staff member in this scenario could easily be played on a female staff member if they express the same levels of vulnerabilities or opportunities in which the inmate can exploit. So let's kind of talk about a game that a female inmate can play, especially if they have a male staff member in mind. I just want to share one thing real quick before I toss over to Connie. I know that female inmates may push the physical side of things. Again, nothing's 100%. So again, we want to be very careful how we say this. But they're going to try to push something where they want the male to kind of act on that animalistic nature. You know, like basically maybe there's a chance. And again, most of our officers are professionals. But bear with me on this, just in case we have that one weak spot. I think what happens here is, again, it's not all cases, but I think what happens here is the females are going to play the physical, right, on a male staff member. And what they're going to do is they're going to see how we react. Now, I know in some cases what some inmates will do, especially if it's a group effort, is they may even find an inmate who fits this puzzle, let's just say. I want to be very careful how I word this, but fits the picture. You know, maybe a young girl that is well developed, you know, got a little bit of maybe a female swag, you know, a little bit of a nice appearance, let's just say that. And trust and believe, when this inmate goes to the officer, the male officer, the other inmates are watching. They're watching to see this interaction. But sometimes we don't realize as male officers, it's not so much what we say, but how our body reacts. Sometimes we're not aware of what our body is doing. And one of the things that the female inmates do look for is when they have that female inmate, let's say the nice looking one coming up playing the game, when that female inmate says what they have to say and they go to walk away, all the female inmates are going to look to see if that male officer is checking out her backside. I don't mean to be blunt with it, but sometimes it may just be a natural reaction, and to see if that officer has a level of control. And some people may think, well, what happens if they do check it? That could be an open window for inmates to try to continue to play that game and possibly utilize that female. Now, again, nothing's 100%. But Connie, what's your thoughts with females playing that physical card?
So I think there's a couple of things. I think before they go to the physical card, I have witnessed females actually go the conversational route to see what I could talk to you about, how far this conversation can go. And usually if that conversation can't get very far, they're getting shut down by the conversation, they're unable to find that commonality or a way to relate to that officer, I feel then there is the default of going to the physical, going to that way of just kind of not necessarily blatantly putting it out there, but it is that female swag that sometimes they just tap into because maybe they've seen the officer look at females before. So they think this is going to work. Or maybe they've seen an officer respond to something before. Maybe they see him respond to the way someone who's cleaning the unit, for example, she's bending over or whatever it is that she's doing in the moment, which at surface may seem like insignificant, but it could be part of the process. That the more we get this officer physically engaged, or those officers who may be in the units, you know, physically kind of keying into the femininity of these offenders, I think that's how they kind of begin to work the process. And, you know, I think officers, do their best to not be responsive in that way. I've worked with many officers who don't respond. But I feel like there's also, you know, we talk about on the female officer side that, you know, the male inmates, they can get them and whatever. I feel like there are some male officers who do come in with the same, whether it's self-esteem issues or troubled marriages or whatever they're lacking. Sometimes they may find it or see it in these offenders. And it's not to say that it always happens, because I don't know that to be a fact. But I do know that when we come in and we're not our whole selves, we are kind of susceptible or vulnerable to these kind of things that the offenders try to do to us.
Yeah, and I want to say also something that we touched on before. Again, we'll talk about the male inmate with the female officer in a little bit, but still staying focused on the male inmate with the female inmate with the male officer. I also believe the females are very good at making it look like that staff member has control. I don't know if you're going to find that where maybe some women who are falling trapped to a male inmate may have some level of being submissive. And again, we'll discuss it. I don't want to generalize, so please bear with me on this. I'm just analyzing right now, and nothing's 100%. I'm not saying that one woman is a representative of all women. I'm not saying that, nor am I saying this one male is a representative of all male. But let's touch on this dialogue. Let's see where it goes. So I think there's a level of game that's played here by the females that even though they are the one in control, because they're using their physicality to bring about some rise from that officer, the male officer. I mean, again, you could have female officers that are attracted to female inmates. But let's just, you know, I just want to make sure people know I'm not just focusing on the male officers, but part of our story, that's what it is. That they could do it in such a way where that officer may still feel that they have that level of control up until they're being brought out in handcuffs, wondering what the hell just happened. And I think that's part of what the catering of that officer's, the catering of that male officer, because again, that male officer wants that level of control. They do not want to be submissive. It just may not be in their nature. So what happens here is now you have this female that really has a tremendous level of control, but somehow she's given that person the belief that they are in control. And how dangerous is that, Connie?
Oh, that's super dangerous. So I think it's dangerous, one, because there's times I feel like the female may not even know how much control she actually has until there is a situation where, you know, maybe there's a request and, you know, the officer feels rejected or what have you. She just may not know how much control she has, which I think when she does realize that she has the control, I think that's where we really have to be concerned about what she can influence the officer to do. You know, whether it's making accommodations for her, whether it's bringing in, we talk about it all the time, when those professional boundaries are crossed and we start introducing contraband, or we start introducing just favors, and then you have the inmates around her seeing what she's capable of doing, that officer may end up in everybody's pocket at that point, because everyone has the potential to bring his game to an end, like to end his career, essentially, if that's the case. If I am the inmate who witnesses and I ask you for something and you tell me no, that puts you in a very bad position if I know that you've got something inappropriate going on with another inmate.
And by the way, the sexual part of the crime, the sexual part of the act is a criminal act. So it gives the inmate a lot of leverage, and therefore the inmate does have control, like Connie said. So the sex act itself is the leverage that's going to be used to manipulate that officer into doing foolish things. And you're right, even if there was a relationship, let's say, which is not allowed, but let's just say between that officer and the inmate, where the officer is foolish enough to trust that inmate, the other inmates are going to see that and want to manipulate that. So whether they think that they can push on the female inmate, or, hey, we got leverage, we got proof, now we'll go ahead and put that on the officer. Now you have an officer that is totally compromised beyond, like you wouldn't believe, who is literally out to cover their own ass. They have really no sense of helping out anybody else, and they're going to pay off these inmates because they're concerned that at any point they could be turned in. Now, the scary thing also about this is that this whole time they think they have a level of control until they don't. And you know what's funny is you can kind of see them starting to lose. Like, let's say word starts to get around that they are having these sexual relationships with this inmate. Maybe at one point it's tough to prove. So what they do is, let's say, you know what? Let's just separate them. Let's separate them and see what happens. So what they'll do is maybe they'll put the inmate in another unit and then, separate them from the officer who is involved. I would say there's a high percentage, not that it's 100%, but a high percentage that officer is going to start to scramble, because now the inmate's no longer where they can see them. They don't know exactly what that inmate could be doing at this point, and that officer is probably going to do what they can to get a message off to that inmate, or maybe even visit the inmate in a unit that they're not supposed to be in at an off time, or whatever it may be. But the reason why they do it is not because they may want to see that inmate so bad because they're caught up. They may want to do it because they don't have no control, and they're looking to maybe just buy some time with a letter, and then, but that's where they start to get sloppy. That's where, if there was a secret, it gets exposed. Because if they're going to pass a communication off to that inmate, it's going to get found out, whether they do it to another inmate, maybe through a phone call, whatever the case may happen. Or if they start visiting in a unit, pretending that they're cool with the officer, like all of a sudden the officer's like, hey, you never hung out here before. I know, I'm just chilling, whatever. Now this officer's thinking like, yeah, but we don't know each other. And then eventually the officer plays that route just to go see the inmate. There have been cases where you have officers that work a unit. By the way, if you have someone in a unit that's not supposed to be there, if the supervisor did not authorize them to be in that unit, you better document it and call your supervisor immediately, because you are responsible for what happens in your unit. Document it, because if they can't prove that there's a relationship with that inmate and that officer, they'll prove the officer was in the unit and you didn't document it. So the key here is the fact that this relationship that's happening, now this officer is going into my unit, bullshitting with me, but then they wind up venturing off and start talking to the same inmate for 25, 30 minutes. We have to regulate that. Hey, we're our brother's keeper, sister's keeper, whatever the case may be. Hey, what's going on with this dialogue? You don't need to be here to talk to my inmates. That's what I'm here for. I'm the messenger now. You know what I mean? Let me know what's going on. But either that, if not, step off my unit. Plus, I called the supervisor. They're en route. We're very curious as to why you're here today. I hate doing it that way, but in all honesty, guys, you will be held to that same level as if you're the one that's having, some undue familiarity relationship with that inmate. But what's your thoughts on what I just said there, Connie? A lot there.
I mean, there is no deliberate indifference. We can't be that way. And so the reality is that inmates do not have the ability to consent no matter how old they are. And we have to bear that in mind. There is no consensual relationship with an inmate. That's the reality. We are legally bound in that way. And so I think holding each other accountable and really protecting each other, right? Because if you have a fellow officer or a civilian, for that matter, who you suspect could be caught up, who you suspect could be compromised, you may be doing that person a favor by making sure that they get out the unit, right? Because any further compromise, it may look like you're part of it. The last thing you want is that you're kind of a part, I guess, inadvertently being included in this situation just because it's happening on your watch. Now, I mean, I've had experienced a situation where, you know, officer and inmate end up having a relationship, essentially, and the others who kind of saw what was happening, the other officers that knew what was going down, end up getting their name called, right? Like, because when the inmate gets jammed up, the inmate is not going to hesitate to put out there whoever else was like, oh, well, this one was his relief and he took me over here, or that one was the relief. They don't hesitate to put people out there. So, you know, I think it's really a matter of we protect ourselves, we protect each other, and we really just call it what we see, instead of like pretending like we don't think something's odd, because usually our intuition or our gut will say, that's off. What's going on with that? You know, why is he spending so much time, or she spending so much time at that inmate's cell? Or why is the inmate always out of cell when everybody's locked in? You know, that it's just odd.
Yeah, we can't wait for the outcome to realize that the action that the person is committing to is wrong. The feeling is what protects us. If we feel it, trust in that feeling and at least say something, because the end result is if you don't go by the feeling, it's going to be too late. I mean, this compromised officer, as we talked about, once the relationship between him and that inmate gets discovered, especially by the other inmates, you got a whole concern going on that it's just going to be very hard to keep track of where that thread is. Now, I also want to say, I'm not going to say there's no emotions tied to this. I think once there is an act, it could lead to some emotions between definitely the officer and the inmate, but I'm not going to always say the inmate and the officer. I'm not going to say it can't happen, because sometimes there could be even though it's still rape, don't get me wrong, it's rape as defined by the fact that this person's in a position of authority and cannot allow or cannot have sex with that inmate. We understand that. But having said that, and it's hard to say that because they're not willing participants by law, but that doesn't mean that they're not willing participants. And I don't want to sugarcoat that. Well, I don't know if I'm sugar, but guys, please follow me on this. I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying that sometimes it takes two to tango, but either way, the officer's still wrong. So I'm not minimizing the officer's responsibility. But with that said, why they're willing, it could be where the issue is. Maybe the game is to get contraband, so I'm going to do what I can to get the leverage, you know, and then which will expose the officer and then eventually get the contraband that I need. But I think some of that connection, as again, is because of the scramble, the fact that the officer at one point may start to lose that sense of control, and they need to get that back. So there comes that scramble, that need to reconnect. That's where they start to become sloppy, and that's where they wind up getting discovered. So again, the physical route, we touched on a little bit on the emotional, but for the most part, it is that physical route. The officer thinking they have that level of control. And you know what's funny? I even when they decide to, let's say, have this physical relationship, a lot of people are going to say, well, how could this happen? The units are cambered, all this other stuff. There's always a way. The inmates know. The inmates know where to circumvent things or where to bring somebody where they will get discovered. So most likely, when it comes to circumventing the rules, most likely I wouldn't doubt if at that part the game is being played where the inmate is kind of mapping it out, you know, and eventually all for that game plan. Because don't forget, guys, if the inmate, you know, gets caught up and they expose this relationship, and when they're doing these interviews, the inmate is going to know everything down to the T, because they're the ones that planned it out, but they're going to make it look like the officer did it. Oh, he took me here. He took me over there. He took me here. What she never says, it was my idea to go to these places, because, again, they know the layout a lot better. And when they're planning and scheming, that's what they're thinking about every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you have an officer that, let's say, I'm talking about officers who it wasn't their intent, but they get caught up. Let's be fair. I'm not talking about an officer who has their mindset and that's what they're going to do when they come into work. They're just going to go ahead and just take advantage of whatever's in front of them. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the officers that may have good intent, but they get turned because there's a slight vulnerability that's exposed. So what happens here is these inmates think about it, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They live in that environment. They're going to know every possible loophole, every pattern that can be exploited. And that's what they lead the officer down. But I promise you, at the whole time they're doing it, especially for the male side, because I'm going to give something different for the female side, they're still going to make it look like the male has control. It's very key that when they go to manipulate the male, again, nothing's 100%, but for the most part, that they show that the male is in control. I'm going to show another perspective for a female. And again, Connie, tell me if you agree or disagree, because I'm just going to put it out in the air. It's with my experience, but maybe I'm wrong. But just before we close off on the men, anything else you want to touch on that you think I missed? And we're talking about female inmates manipulating male officers.
No, I don't think so. I think we pretty much covered it. I think it's just, having a general understanding that the manipulation happens. And I think just bearing in mind that the point at which a sexual act actually occurs, the boundary violation probably happened way before then. And so we just have to acknowledge that that female has probably been working that officer all along before it even got to the actual sexual act, where we know that is a blatant violation, whereas there were probably violations all along. So I think that we have definitely covered everything for now as far as the female inmate and male officer.
Right now, we're going to cross into the male inmate and female officer. So again, just going to do my, whatever it is, the little disclosure. Is it a disclosure? Mm-hmm. Nothing's 100%. There are some females that are going to go just the opposite of this. But again, this is just a dialogue and the effort just to have a conversation, right? So when a male inmate tries to, let me be on the safe side because I'm a male, right? So I'm not a fool here, Connie. I'm not a fool. I think I'm going to give you the mic, and then you start the dialogue, and then we'll go from there, because I know where I want to go, but I don't have the courage to introduce it. Again, but nothing's 100%. Just hear me out, guys, please. Obviously, there are a lot of females, they're benefit to the profession. We know that, guys. They have heart. I just want to do a general discussion, and then if it applies, it applies. If it doesn't, guys, it wasn't meant to apply for you, because obviously you're not the stereotype that I'm trying to put out there. It's more of just to get the dialogue out there and good knowledge to have. So Connie, let's talk about the game that you think would happen between a male inmate, a dominant male inmate trying to manipulate a female staff member.
So, first I can talk a little bit about statistics, right? And so instead of making it seem as though we're picking on the female, because we're not, statistically, or maybe that's just what's reported, right? So in all fairness, they say that the female officer gets manipulated or strung down this road more often than the male officer does. And they say that happens because there are dominant inmates that, female officers are working with, and somehow their dominance overshadows the female's ability to, I guess, navigate that male bravado or what have you. I don't know how true that is. That's just what I've seen statistically. Now, what we do know, though, is that there are situations where both male and female officers do come in and they do have significant vulnerabilities or insecurities. We found that, there have been female officers who come in, the husband's not treating them right, or the boyfriend's left them, or they're in sort of this emotional space that has them vulnerable, whether it's a home life or whether even they don't feel as significant at work as they would like to feel. These are different things that play into the self-esteem and the self-confidence. And then in comes off the male offender who is going to tell them all the things that they want to hear, who is, he's not coming in pushy, he's coming in complimentary. He's coming in from an angle that will make her feel good or feel good about herself, or kind of play into that. And so what we've seen is that if the female doesn't shut him down, he may stop for now, but he may come back, right? Especially if there is some game that's being played. Like if this is a female officer who's been tough, you know, sometimes it's the other inmates who are kind of pushing that male inmate to go and make the connection with this officer so that they can gain some level of control over the unit or some level control over that officer so she can start bringing things in. We've seen officers on times where, you know, the female officer is doing things that she shouldn't be doing for the offenders and introducing contraband, and, you know, the sexual acts are happening. And the moment you have those male inmates who sees that male inmate dominate that officer is the moment that we see a significant breakdown in those units.
Right. And by the way, everything you're saying is so spot on. Thank you for introducing that thought. Now I can feel free to say, well, since Connie wants to go there, you know, I was totally thinking something totally different, but I guess just to continue with the dialogue you already started, I'm going to go ahead. Yeah. Because I was totally thinking it could never happen to a female officer, to be honest with you. But you know what? There is that potential. There's that 0.000000001%. But with that said, just with all, so obviously I believe there is an end game with the men. I believe that obviously with any manipulation, they get a sense of power and control, in which there is the outcome. The outcome is, you know, I'm sure sex is definitely an outcome for them, but ultimately there's probably a bigger outcome. You know, can I get her to have feelings for me? You know, can I make this woman feel wanted to the point where they connect themselves to me? So now when they're at home, they're thinking of me because I've connected to every positive thought that they can have, like the Joyce Mitchell situation. You know, I mean, anytime you think of something positive, you're going to connect it to me. So anytime you go to think something good about yourself, I'm there, you know, and she's home and she's thinking of him. You know, I think here the inmate plays on that need to connect with that individual emotionally, which makes them not think logically about what they're doing. Now, also on another note, because there could be some females that are no different than males, that, you know, they have that physical attraction. That physical attraction supersedes any level of professionalism. And then they go ahead and they do it just to do it. I mean, whatever the case may be. Same thing with the men we just mentioned, you know, not pushing either one out of that circle because it could happen. But for the females, there could be that emotional bond that the inmate plays into, that connection that of something positive that individual connects himself to. So they need that inmate. They need that connection to obviously feel good about themselves. And I think what happens here in the long run is they do wind up falling in love with the inmate. I'm not going to say that you can't have male inmates that are reciprocate that feeling, but from what I've seen, it rarely happens. Because, again, they have an end game. And once that person becomes nothing more than an object, because let's be honest with you, these people are being used. They're wrong in what they're doing, don't get me wrong, but they're being used because the inmates that are doing it see them as objects. You're means to an end. So at the end of the day, I'll play the route. But if you fall in love with me, I have no problem with telling you to F off because you're just an object. You know, if you psychopaths, sociopaths, whatever, they see people as objects. They don't see them with a level of humanity like we do. So at the end of the day, I don't mind using you. You know, I don't mind using you. And I will say there could be some inmates that, you know, may develop that, but, you know, some level of feeling towards the staff member, but it's rare. It's very rare because at the end of the day, this is their life. They have to survive, and there's always going to be an end game, you know. And even if the end game is sex, it's still enough to say, okay, hey, by the way, stop bringing this in. So now they get a double benefit. They get the physical act, but they also get, hey, now that I got us caught up, here's what I need you to do. And the funny thing is that this is what I wanted to get at. With the males, I know this may sound a little weird. So this is where, taking off my hat now, I don't want my thought right now associated with Tear Talk. Yeah, I'm sorry, man. Okay, I'm going to put this up in the air. And again, I'm not generalizing it. Just bear with me, okay? So the female inmates that are manipulating a male staff member, I see them trying to get a level of control. But again, they're letting the officer feel that they're in control, right? A little bit of a different game. Where I feel that the male inmates, when they go to manipulate a female staff member that fits this level of vulnerability, bear with me, they're going to go ahead and use some form of protection. Let me have this person be relying on me. Let me show them I can protect them and play that route. I don't see the female ever wanting that level of control. I see the inmate playing the other route, the protection route. Now, again, I don't think there's nothing insulting in what I said, but I really would like your thoughts on what I just said, Connie.
So I'm not sure that the female is looking for any particular control in that situation. Perhaps there is, some, thought that with this relationship, there's a different level of fulfillment. And I don't know that control is what the female officer would be looking for. Because if anything, she's giving up her control by entering into this situation with the male inmate. Now, I think the male inmate, of course, is looking for the control. He is going to make sure he can control what that officer is doing. He is going to make sure he can control what that officer brings into the facility for him. But I do not see that the female officer is going to gain any leverage with that inmate whatsoever.
So how do you feel about what I said about the protection, though? Do you feel that the male inmate does offer a level of protection? Well, okay, I'll give you an example. Let me say this. Again, bear with me, guys. It's a discussion. We're just generally going along the way. But let's go back to the female with the male. The female officer with the male. I'm sorry, the female inmate with the male officer, right? I could picture the female inmate playing the game, but kind of convincing the officer the whole way that, they're in control of this process there, whatever it is. For some reason, when it comes to the male inmate playing out the female staff member, I could picture the male inmate telling the female staff member, don't worry, I got you. I'll make sure we're okay. I'll take care of that. I think it's a little bit different because I think if a female inmate was to play that with a male staff member, I could see the male staff member saying, nope, you don't got me.
So I get what you're saying. So I guess I could see that happening, right? Like when you think about a female officer that's kind of manning a unit on her own, right? That male inmate may be able to offer her quote unquote protection from other inmates, right? So I could see that. I could also see that if they're entering into this relationship, essentially, that's really the only thing he could do is promise to protect her, that she's not going to get in trouble. He's going to make sure no one ever finds out. He's going to make sure that she's safe. Her job is safe. It's just all these, I think, the false sense of security that he's going to give her to make her feel like she is protected and that it's okay to continue on in the situation until he gets what he wants.
Right. So I know this is kind of weird, but let me just tell you how my mind puts this together. I picture, again, I try to be very objective, but I also try to picture myself in the individual shoes and trying to see what I'm okay with and what I wouldn't be okay with if I was kind of being turned and what would automatically wake me up and push me off that path. I think if I was a male officer and I'm being pushed in by this female inmate, I could not see myself in the role that I'm in. First off, as an officer, I'm already in an authoritative position, plus my male ego, my pride. I could not see myself being protected by a female inmate. I just can't see that. I think that they would have to show that I'm in control, which feeds my ego a little bit. Also, my position of authority, and I'm okay. For the female side, again, just generally speaking, guys, again, just not everyone, just bear with me. I actually see the female officer who's caught up in this game, so it's not every female, but just bear with me, who's caught up in this game, may be okay with giving up some level of authority and maybe that willingness to be protected by that male inmate. And the reason why I'm thinking that is because I've also seen it with rookies too, so male or female, but I have witnessed some where male inmates will go to female staff members and say, don't worry, I got you. And then I've seen good female staff members turn it right back around and say, what do I need you for? I got my staff. And they're quick to say, I'm not going to be relying on you. And they're quick to nip it in the bud. But I also, be honest with you, I've also seen that game played on male staff, especially if they're hesitant in what they do all day. And the inmate may come up and see that hesitancy as a sign of this person's not confident. This person may have a level of fear in them. And then what they do is they try to balance that out by saying, if you have a concern, I'll help you. And then, God forbid, the staff member agrees with that, as opposed to doing what the female officer said and say, yo, I don't need you. But again, I think that matters. I think the level, I think that could be one difference. The female officer or the female inmate may provide the person with a level of control, or think they have a perspective of control, if you will. But with the male inmate to the female officer, it's a different route. It's a road of protection, because maybe even the female may feel a sense of vulnerability in a male housing unit. I don't know, and they look to balance it out. But again, I'm not speaking for everyone. It's just a generalized thought. Connie, anything else you want to touch up on this? Is there anything that we missed?
I don't think so. I mean, I think this is one of those dialogues where I'm not walking away with a question or like with another answer that, we left a stone unturned. I think that the game gets adjusted based on the individual who's being targeted, regardless of whether it's a male or female inmate or male or female officer. And I feel like those who are astute at playing the game are in a constant state of observation, and they decide very calculatedly how they are going to play the game with their next target.
Right. I like what you just said. Again, we did it very general, but each tactic, if the opportunity exists for the opposite gender, whatever it is, it's going to work. I mean, you're going to find that there are different personalities, and at this point you could have a male that's more emotional and that looks for that connection because maybe they've been divorced, maybe they're hurt, whatever it is, and inmates will play into that, and it will be a different approach. And then you could also have a female that may want, that physical aggression. And again, that would be a different approach. But just to kind of keep things, fair, I don't know, but just to kind of have this discussion to answer what was asked, I think we covered a pretty good perspective. Definitely something worthy of a continued dialogue depending on the comments that are there. And I just want to end by saying this is 1%, if not less. For the males that work in female jails or prisons, they are very, at least the ones I've dealt with, I can't control. There are going to be some bad apples, but those bad apples do not define the bunch. I worked with a lot of professionals who inmates could play the game all they want. The officers will nip it in the bud and they'll make it known that it's them. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing, guys, real quick, how you respond to the games that inmates play. You have to make sure that the inmates know that it's you that don't tolerate it, that your professionalism that won't tolerate it. Because me and Connie had mentioned something in the car where when you talk to a lot of officers, some of them will say, well, yeah, that girl's not worth going to jail for 5 years for. The consequence isn't your motivation to do the right thing. It's, I'm not here for that purpose. I'm a professional. Keep that in the back of your mind, because at the end of the day, even if someone lifts the consequences and you weren't going to go to jail for 5 years, it still doesn't make it right. It's not your position of authority that allows you to do that. You're in a better, you're in a position because you're trusted. So it's not so much about the consequence. It's not so much about, if you do this, you're going to go to jail for 5 years. No, it's about the fact that you're you're professional. It shouldn't even come into your mind. Plus, that piece of authority that you have to protect it. Don't do anything where people could create leverage to gain that control over you. So again, it's not the consequence that stops you. It's the fact that you're a professional. Inmate comes up and says, you smell nice, or you look, whatever it is. Don't play into that. And I'm going to tell you a little quick thing. Kind of sad to say, but these inmates, if they see that there is a male, my scenario would be from a female facility for this one, but Could be also at a male facility. But if they see someone that they know has low self-esteem, when you come into this profession, you have to know yourself like you wouldn't believe. I mean, honestly, you may have to even reevaluate yourself every day. That car ride home, think about yourself every day. I remember this one officer, male officer, who, I'm not the best looking guy either. So I know, it is what it is. I'm a 5. I expect to get 3s. I never expect to get 8s or 10s. So, hey, it is what it is. I'm telling you. Hey, you know what? If I'm lucky, I could get 2 3s and get a 6. I'm just joking. Guys, bear with me. I'm having fun. But there's a point to this. You'll get these better looking inmates that will feed into your ego. They'll play you. And if you have low self-esteem, they're going to lift you up and they're going to tell you everything that you want to hear. But you know what kept me also safe at the end of the day? Is I know, this may sound fucked up, but it is what it is. I don't even know if I should even keep this, but I'm a 5. I never had a 10 do that. You know what I mean? So at the end of the day, now all jokes aside, at the end of the day, guys, don't fall for those traps. Keep yourself clear from the ones that know that you're reacting to it. Because you know why I'm saying the 5s and the 10s, whatever it is? Because they know it's going to be the first time that someone that may look somewhat decent has pushed on you that way. And they're going to see that you want that attention, that you need that attention. And if you don't nip it in the bud at that moment, you will go under because you're going to want that attention, because you never had that attention. Let me tell you something, guys. If you come in this profession wanting attention like that and you get it, you're going to go down the wrong path because that attention is going to be so welcoming to you because maybe you never had that before. And it's going to stray you down a path that you don't want to go on. So before they even get a chance to open up that door, before they even get a chance to give you the attention that you may never have had, quickly, I don't need it. Nip it in the bud. Let them know that's something that you do not tolerate, and document. So if they can't get to you, they also can't get to someone else who may fall for that attention. And that is the key to my story. The key to my story is if you were never one that got that attention growing up, and all of a sudden you're finally getting that attention, sit back and ask yourself, why? Now, be honest with yourself. We have to be honest. I welcome all my flaws. It is what it is. Be honest with yourself. You know what I mean? Why am I getting all this attention? And before you start welcoming it, because it's going to be a new world that you're going to love, nip it. I've seen it happen. I know I'm passionate about it right now. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen with people that want the attention so bad, and it just feels good to them, and they brag about it. It's like, dude, they're inmates. Do you know that you're bragging about inmates? At the end of the day, I don't care how good. She's an inmate. He's an inmate. Why are you bragging about that? It's showing that you want that attention, or at least it's showing me that you want that attention. So how are you regulating that on the unit? How are you telling that inmate that shit's inappropriate? Are you documenting it? Are you doing something? No, you're welcoming it. Stop. I don't care if you never had it your whole life. Get used to it. Stop it now. Am I making any sense? Because I see, but does that make any sense? I'm very passionate about it.
No, seriously, because, we've seen great officers get caught up because they are getting this attention. This is something new. This is something that feels good. This is something that they like. They don't necessarily want the inmate to stop, especially if it's one of the better looking inmates. And should we be even thinking this inmate looks good and this one doesn't? The manipulative behavior doesn't necessarily have a face. It is the behavior that has an end game. They're not looking to go marry you. They're not looking to take care of you. They're not looking to start a life with you. They're looking to get what they need while they're behind the wall because they can't get it any other way. You are just the way that they're trying to get it. That's all.
Well said. And again, motives control. It's control. So again, please don't take this dialogue the wrong way. I'm just putting it out there as it is. Sometimes there's no way you could sugarcoat something. I wish I could. But this is corrections. This is the world we live in, and you need to have thick skin, and you need to be ready that this is reality. We're giving you reality, and if you find it offensive, I'm sorry, guys. There's just no other way to put it. But again, I thought we were fair in saying that it's not everyone, and just be open to the dialogue. And please, guys, I think this could actually have a further discussion. So hit us up in the comments. Let us know what you think. Maybe share some stories. That's always great. We love to get those stories because it shows how what we taught is applied. And I think that's phenomenal. But I'm actually really looking forward to seeing the outcome. One of the videos right now that I think I've looked forward to the most to seeing what the outcome is. And thank you, Connie, for being able to sit down because it's controversial, but we don't run from that. You know, you can't. You can't, or else we'll never get nothing done. Hey, Connie, have anything you want to say in closing?
I want to say I hope that we were helpful. I hope that this opens up some eyes. This may not be you today, and we hope that it's not you tomorrow. We just really want to make sure that the information is out there and people know that it is a possibility, that these are things that are happening. You may not know who it's happening to, but they are happening. And so just stay safe, stay on your toes, stay alert.
Yes, well said. And Connie, again, thank you. Guys, don't forget, I'm going to give some shout outs as the book gets closer. But The Cage was her cocoon.
Yep.
You see. Will come out in the market soon. Hopefully you guys support her book. I will also buy a lot of books from her. I think I'm going to buy like 10. But be giving them away. I'm going to also talk to Guardian to see if they would also like to maybe help me out and get some books just to get it out there. I think it's a great read. Again, it talks about struggle but hope. So it is a positive read. But there's a lot you can learn. It's Connie, guys. It's Connie. So, I mean, that's all I got to say. And then hopefully my book will be out in the market soon and we'll do the same, just showing support for each other because, again, we're doing this on our own time and we just want to get the information out there because we love you guys. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So as always, guys, the show is Tear Talk. If you haven't, please subscribe, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. The bell's going to notify you every time I post a video. Stay safe.